today, the European Parliament will vote on the contested EU-Canada free trade deal known as CETA. So what's the situation? Let's take a look. Already, trade between Canada and the 28 countries of the European Union is flourishing. Last year, the EU exported goods and services valued at 37.3 billion euros, and the bloc also imported 29.8 billion euros in goods and services. Now, with CETA, the comprehensive economic and trade agreement between Canada and the EU, the volume of trade is expected to grow even more. After all, 99% of EU tariffs are eventually set to be duty-free. European companies will also be able to apply for public contracts in Canada, and disputes will be settled before a permanent public investment court. But first, of course, the EU Parliament has to give the thumbs up, and that amid rising anti-globalization sentiment here in Europe. And that is something I would like to discuss now with our studio guest, Helga Reimund from Germany's anti-globalization Attac group. Good to have you here with us. Perhaps you could first of all fill us in. What exactly is it that you criticize about CETA?
Well, you already said that what you normally expect from a trade deal is to cut taxes, maybe to zero or almost zero. But as this is already the case in this agreement, it's about non-tariff barriers to trade. And these barriers to trade are ensuring benefits for people, for the environment and stuff like that.
But isn't exactly, well, CETA is like a sort of soft version of a free trade deal, certainly of the newer kinds, much better than TTIP, many people say, I think, including your organization, because it wants, amongst other things, to harmonize regulations on matters such as health, the environment and so forth. Isn't that a step in the right direction?
Yes, but as you mentioned, this chapter about the environment, it's very weak and it's not enforceable, actually. But investors' rights are enforceable via this ISDS system, which will now be carried on in a so-called investor court system that still has to be created.
And that still has to be ratified, because that is actually one of the contested points, not just amid anti-globalization groups, but also within various parliaments. So maybe that will not come through.
But still, it is a part of the deal so far. So if today thumbs are up for it, then
I know your groups protesting in front of the EU Parliament today.
Yes.
I mean, but what is the alternative? What is it that you want instead?
At least if a new trade deal has to be created, we'd like that environmental rights or labor rights would be enforceable via this deal as well, which are so far only via the domestic law. But foreign companies still have this exclusive right to tackle regulations from the domestic governments via this ICS system. So it's an exclusive right. And if, for instance, a company harms labor rights, then these workers or their unions don't have the possibility to sue the company via the ICS system, via the CETA agreement, but only via the domestic law. So
you're still in favor of free trade, but not necessarily in the Trump or Le Pen style protectionism, very briefly.
Of course, we are not opposing trade. Free trade, it's a matter of how it is created, how the trade deal is actually...
It's a question of the ingredients of the free trade agreement. Helga Reimund there from Germany's anti-globalization Attac group. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.